Hey guys, it's Tyken here. I'm back with another video for you, so let's dive right in. Oh, and don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. Let me know which manhwa you want to see next. Let's go! The clan's history was forged by untouchable legends, warriors who defined the peak of strength and shaped the world. It was a legacy marked by an insatiable bloodlust and an ambition that often bordered on madness. For them, the only thing that mattered was absolute supremacy, leaving only loneliness at the top for the victor. Within that brutal hierarchy, the weak had no voice. Their existence served only to be controlled by the strongest. The Runcandle family mansion didn't function as a welcoming home, but rather as a cold and ruthless arena. The protagonist was born under the crushing shadow of countless ancestors and prodigious siblings, bearing the weight of a legendary surname. From the cradle, his destiny was decided by the blade. The baby was expected to seek the sword before even learning to walk. Before the patriarch's overwhelming presence, the boy felt insignificant, suffocated by the demand for a power he didn't possess. Jin naively believed, for a brief moment, that his future would be naturally bright, filled with fame and glory. However, this sweet illusion shattered violently against the harsh reality of his condition. No matter how much the young man strained himself to exhaustion, the truth was cruel. He didn't possess a shred of talent for the sword. He became the living shame of the family. The labels of disgrace and failure weighed on his shoulders as he trained in isolation. But not even in his isolation did the boy find peace. A sudden noise and a call interrupted his solitary practice. Jin turned slowly, recognizing that presence and anticipating the usual contempt that would follow. The cruel smile plastered on his brother's face confirmed that another session of mockery and humiliation was about to begin. The older brother smiled with disdain, clearly savoring the opportunity to torment the family's shame. Jin felt the weight of that hostile presence, unable to hide the nervousness that took over his body. The young man held his wooden sword, aware that the difference in power between them made any defense useless. Irritated by the younger brother's silence, the aggressor demanded an immediate response, resorting to physical violence without warning. The blow struck Jin with brutality, punishing him for his supposed insolence before a superior. The impact was enough to knock him down, leaving him breathless and struggling to stay conscious on the cold ground. Vulnerable, the protagonist looked up, finding only the arrogant gaze of someone who knew himself untouchable. Driven by the instinct for survival, he tried to reach his fallen weapon, refusing to give up completely. However, before his fingers closed on the hilt, a heavy boot crushed his hand, blocking the action. Jin gritted his teeth tightly, suppressing a cry of pain as his attempt at resistance was thwarted. The brother then pulled out a stack of papers, revealing that the physical torture was just the prelude to something worse. He waved the documents in the air with an air of triumph, amusing himself with the younger brother's impending doom. The amusement soon gave way to pure malice, as he prepared to destroy what little Jin had left. Ignoring the young man's desperate cry to stop, the man grabbed the training sword with both hands. The wood cracked and broke in half, symbolizing the fragility of Jin's hopes within that ruthless clan. Jin's hope shattered at that instant. Terror paralyzed his movements before the imminent threat. His efforts were trampled without any mercy. Everything the young man built with so much sweat was destroyed in seconds. The brother subdued him with brutal violence, grabbing him to impose his physical and psychological dominance. There was no escape. As Jin struggled in vain to break free, his tormentor justified the cruelty as a twisted favor. The humiliation was absolute. The protagonist stared at the imposing figure, painfully realizing that the distance of power between them was insurmountable. He always envied the natural talent that his siblings possessed. That innate strength seemed like an unattainable dream for him. Jin naively believed that hard work would be enough to compensate for his lack of talent. He clung desperately to this conviction. The boy convinced himself that persistence would eventually bring recognition from his family. But he was wrong. The final sentence was delivered, sealing his fate irrevocably. Jin Runcandle was officially banished from his home and his lineage. The clan's symbol, once a source of pride, now represented only total rejection. The doors of glory closed for him. The exiled one stood before the colossal entrance, stripped of his title, his heritage, and his future. Frustration burned in his veins. He suppressed his impotent rage, unable to change the injustice of that verdict. A cruel smile marked the farewell. There was no compassion for the family failure, only a cold, calculated contempt. Without direction or purpose, the former noble began his solitary walk, left to his own devices in a ruthless world. He became just another forgotten face in the crowd, hiding his identity and shame under the cloak of anonymity. The memory of a luminous and unattainable power still visited his thoughts. It wasn't just physical strength, but an energy he could never control. He recalled how easily magic flowed for the talented, a bitter contrast to his own failure. Back in the monotonous reality of his exile, Jin noticed a sudden change in the atmosphere around him. A sinister presence rose from the ground, paralyzing him with an instinctive fear. The young man recoiled in panic, surprised by the supernatural manifestation invading his refuge. There was nowhere to run. Darkness took over everything, enveloping him completely. Jin tried to stay conscious, facing the abyss that was forming before him. From the depths, a colossal entity revealed itself, declaring its sovereignty over the shadows. The ancient being recognized the boy's lineage, addressing him as a true run candle. The exiled one stood still, feeling insignificant before the magnitude of that divinity. The entity leaned in, examining the human soul with peculiar interest. Suddenly, mystical chains became visible, exposing the secret that had bound him since birth. The god of shadows questioned the nature of that barrier, realizing something that Jin himself didn't know. The seal shone brightly, revealing that the young man's lack of talent was, in fact, an imposed curse. With a violent snap, the mystical chains that bound his potential finally gave way and dissolved into the air. The entity ensured that this restriction would never torment him again. Jin felt the weight of years of failure dissipate, realizing that he was finally free. As the divine presence began to retreat into the shadows, the young Runcandle watched silently, processing the sudden change in his destiny. He remained still for a moment after the god's departure. The promise that he would continue to be watched echoed in his mind. But now he had a chance. There was no time to waste on doubts or reflections. Jin gripped the hilt of his sword, needing to test his new condition immediately. The protagonist ran to the outer courtyard, eager to put his body to the test and discover the extent of his freedom. His fingers closed firmly around the grip. The weapon felt like a natural extension of his arm now, without the crushing weight from before. With a fluid movement, he cut through the air, seeking the invisible resistance that had always hindered his movements in the past. The blade obeyed perfectly, vibrating with a stability and strength that he had never been able to achieve during his years of training. The realization hit him hard. A smile of pure satisfaction and confidence appeared as he realized that the curse was truly gone. The young man continued to move, attacking the void, feeling a lightness and speed that were foreign to him until that moment. Each strike was precise and vigorous. The joy of finally having absolute control over his own body was intoxicating. However, swordsmanship was just the beginning. Jin decided to summon his mana, testing whether magic would also flow freely along with his movements. The energy responded to his call instantly, running through the steel and enveloping the blade in an aura of concentrated power. There was the true potential that had been denied to him. Jin now wielded the perfect combination of steel and magic, ready to rewrite his story. Jin felt the power flow through his veins. All the effort of that cursed life was finally bearing tangible fruit. However, his memory suddenly betrayed him, dragging him back to the dark forest of that fateful night. Armored knights surrounded him. The young man knew that there was no escape against those silent opponents. The fatal blow came quickly and mercilessly. The sharp pain marked the exact moment when his previous life was taken. In his last moments of lucidity, Jin's hand trembled, desperately trying to grab something in the void. He fell defeated among the rubble, not understanding why fate had been so cruel to him until the end. Blood streamed from his mouth, taking with it the consciousness and last hopes of the Runcandle. His assassins left without looking back, leaving the failed body to rot in the ruins. Death embraced him completely. Silence took over everything, signaling the end of his journey. But fate intervened. An ancient book lay mysteriously beside his forgotten corpse. The darkness of the place was then disturbed, as if time and space were being rewritten. Suddenly, consciousness returned. The boy woke with a start, confused as to why he still existed. The vivid image of his own shattered body bathed in blood still haunted his mind. However, upon examining himself, the shock was immediate. Those hands were too small to be an adult's. Jin raised his head and froze. Imposing figures from his past stood before him, alive again. The garden was full of blades stuck in the ground, awaiting the decisive moment of the selection ceremony. A maternal figure watched the scene with affection, silently encouraging the little one to make his choice. Among so many common weapons, something unique immediately caught the protagonist's attention and awakened his memories. He recognized the blade instantly. It was Banished, the legendary inheritance and ultimate symbol of the clan. Jin could hardly believe the opportunity that fate was offering him so early in his new life. The sword seemed to call to him, standing out like an imposing beacon among the other irrelevant options. The baby stood firm on the ground, moved by a will that did not match his tender age. Although his body was fragile and clumsy, he advanced stubbornly across the lawn towards his goal. Jin ignored everything around him and reached out to the object that would define his future as a Runkandel. The clan members watched the scene, at first just amused by the child's curious movements. However, the young man knew exactly what he was doing. He vowed that, this time, his path would be different. He approached the golden blade with the absolute conviction of someone claiming what is rightfully theirs. The patriarch, however, noticed the intensity in his son's eyes, and his expression changed to pure astonishment. The atmosphere in the garden suddenly changed, and the spectators felt the weight of that decision. The family leader narrowed his eyes, witnessing the birth of a potential he never expected to see. The memory of the legendary sword Banished and the weight of that choice still echoed in Jin's mind. However, he knew that absolute power was still far from the reach of his childish hands. Time passed, and the young Runkandel was sent to live in isolation in the imposing Storm Castle. His child's body, however, imposed frustrating physical limitations on his daily ambitions. Jin realized that, however mature his mind was, his stature prevented him from achieving what he wanted. But he wasn't the type to be defeated by obstacles as simple as height. With a little improvisation, the protagonist overcame the physical barrier that separated him from knowledge. He immersed himself in reading, absorbing vital information to ensure his future survival. Suddenly, his concentration on his studies was broken by a restless presence behind him. The nanny entered the room, but her expression instantly changed from zeal to pure horror. With a trembling voice, the woman warned the young master about something grotesque she had found. A dead animal had been left there, as a bloody warning, a cruel and macabre prank. Jin, however, showed no fear. He simply observed the scene with a calculating and adult coldness. The servant turned to the hallway, immediately realizing who the real culprits were. Jin's brothers watched from the shadows, amused by the sadistic attempt to traumatize a child. Jin clearly recalled the exact moment he was found in that past life. The memory surfaced vividly in his mind. The young Runkandel didn't feel fear, but rather amused contempt for his brother's arrogant stance. He simply awaited their next move. His mind briefly wandered to the dark memories of his previous existence. Back then, isolation and silence were his only companions. He knew exactly who they were. In the future, those two would become notorious assassins who hunted him without any mercy. Their cruelty started early. Killing an innocent creature was just a sadistic warning to try and intimidate him. Surrounded by imminent threats, the protagonist remained still. He refused to show the weakness or dread they expected from him. The brothers smiled maliciously, believing they had absolute control of the situation. They eagerly awaited Jin's emotional collapse. However, silence remained. Jin clenched his jaw and didn't give them the satisfaction of a trembling response. The lack of reaction irritated the aggressor. He mocked openly, leaning in and pretending not to hear his younger brother's voice. The verbal provocation escalated to physical violence. Frustrated, the older brother grabbed Jin, shouting and demanding an immediate answer. Determined to teach a painful lesson through brute force, the aggressor prepared a punch to punish that silent insolence. But the attack was abruptly interrupted. Jin intercepted the blow, holding the opponent's fist with shocking firmness. Fear instantly replaced arrogance on the brother's face. He froze, unable to comprehend how the supposed failure possessed such strength. Jin's aura shifted, revealing his true nature. With an icy and absolute authority, he ordered the aggressor to shut up. Without hesitation, Jin retaliated. He unleashed his suppressed strength in a devastating counterattack that sent his brother flying violently backward. The brother, refusing to accept the humiliation, let anger guide him and delivered a reckless blow against the protagonist. Jin, however, predicted the attack with ease, seeing the opening in the aggressor's guard as if time had slowed down. Instead of retreating, the youth advanced, connecting a precise counterattack that violently interrupted the rival's advance. He channeled a dark energy into his fist, ensuring that the impact was devastating enough to end the fight in a single instant. The hidden power dissipated from his hand as quickly as it appeared, leaving only the invisible trace of the blow. With the threat neutralized, the young Runkandel regained his composure, coldly observing the result of his strength without showing remorse. The commotion attracted the nanny, who froze at the door, stunned to find the aggressors on the ground and Jin standing. One of the brothers lost consciousness immediately, succumbing completely to the unexpected force of the impact. The other, still on the ground, looked up terrified, unable to comprehend how the supposed shame of the family had overpowered him. The woman realized the severity of the injuries, and the initial shock transformed into urgent concern. The conscious brother babbled, questioning reality as fear replaced his former arrogance. Jin remained silent, his impenetrable expression offering no explanation for the sudden shift in power. The physical pain finally hit the fallen boy, who groaned as he realized that his defeat was real and humiliating. Determined to seek professional help for the injured, the nanny announced that she would take them to a doctor immediately. However, Jin intervened with cold authority, forbidding her from calling any outside help at that moment. The young Runkandel ordered them to follow him, guiding the attention away from the immediate chaos. The atmosphere changed, transporting the narrative to a moment marked by incessant and melancholic rain. With a gentle touch on the damp earth, he paid his last respects before a makeshift grave. Jin remained there, motionless in the downpour, mourning a death that, to others, meant nothing. Not far away, those responsible for the cruelty lay unconscious, oblivious to the pain they had caused. Their ignorance of their own evil was the fuel for the silent fury that the protagonist carried. It was then that the family guardian found the scene, trying to understand what had transpired between the children. The warrior questioned the boy's actions, shocked to see the other brothers subdued in that way. Jin's mind, however, revisited the cause of it all. The brothers' sadistic laughter as they took an innocent life on a whim. With an icy gaze, the protagonist declared that the punishment was necessary for them to feel the weight of their atrocities. The child's words carried a maturity and darkness that made the adult hesitate for a moment. There was no fear in Jin's posture, only the absolute certainty of someone who had delivered righteous justice. The guardian tried to rationalize what he saw, desperately searching for the origin of that oppressive force. His combat experience revealed a disturbing truth. The energy used for that feat was unknown. As suspicion grew in the man's mind, the last traces of the forbidden power silently dissipated from the boy's hand. An imposing presence emerged amidst the storm, patiently waiting outside. The family patriarch watched with a sharp gaze, coldly assessing the situation with absolute detachment. Faced with such an oppressive aura, the messenger hesitated, feeling the weight of authority before him. The man then spoke his orders, making it clear that he would not tolerate failures or delays. From inside the castle, Jin watched the activity in the courtyard, aware that time was running out. The boy understood that the servant intended to take news of the incident directly to the clan leader. He recalled his father's overwhelming strength, a warrior capable of crushing any opponent like an insect. However, the young man was not intimidated. He turned his attention back to his own hand. The power of shadows answered his call, flowing smoothly under his control. In this new life, he had the protection and the contract of the god of shadows, Soldaret. The limitations that held him back in the past had disappeared. He was finally able to act. Jin clenched his fist, feeling the dark energy solidify his determination and strength. A calculating calm washed over his face. He knew exactly what he needed to do next. The goal was now clear and inevitable. He needed to confront the source of all that power. The protagonist waited in the darkness, mentally preparing for the decisive encounter with his father. The shocking news echoed through the shadows. The fact that the youngest son had surpassed the twins seemed impossible to many. The veteran knight processed the information, trying to reconcile Jin's reputation for failure with that brutal outcome. The movement immediately attracted the attention of the other members of the lineage, who interrupted their tasks. This was not an isolated incident. A full military force had been summoned, awaiting orders before the guardian beast. She watched the regrouping coldly, calculating the implications of that sudden display of power. Command was on high alert. The heavy atmosphere indicated that a storm was about to break over the family. While some maintained their composure, others could barely hide their excitement at the prospect of chaos. The siblings gathered, exchanging glances that mixed mockery and morbid curiosity about what was to come. With a sharp movement, the order to depart was given, breaking the static of the moment. The destination was set without hesitation. The entire troop headed for the fortress known as Storm Castle. The Runkandel elite marched in unison, a rare sight that inspired fear in anyone who crossed their path. Under the family banner, ignorance of the mission's true purpose did not diminish blind loyalty to the clan. Mary, bored with the mystery, questioned Diffus about the situation, revealing that not even the eldest sister knew the cause. Diffus analyzed the variables logically. He ruled out the twins as the reason, as he knew they would not be at the destination. However, something about this sudden summons piqued his interest. He felt that an important piece of the game had changed. Mary recoiled for a moment, surprised by the sudden change in the atmosphere around her. The patriarch's overwhelming presence filled the room, demanding absolute attention from all those present. Realizing her carelessness in the face of that aura, the young Runkandel immediately apologized to her sister. Luna, however, maintained her unwavering focus, analyzing the situation with the typical coldness of the family. The eldest sister wondered internally if the boy really possessed enough utility to justify such a commotion. Meanwhile, far away, the nanny was dedicated to preparing Jin for the decisive encounter. The protagonist, however, seemed distant, lost in strategic calculations about the approaching confrontation. Jilly gently asked him to turn around, trying to maintain a semblance of normality in the face of the impending tension. As she adjusted the final details of his attire, Jin felt the weight of destiny settle upon his shoulders. The young man needed to discover if the power of shadows would be his only tool for survival, or if he himself would be the key to ensuring the future prosperity of the clan. The great doors opened. Rows of elite knights awaited, forming a corridor of blades and impeccable military discipline. At the end of the hall, Siren Runkandel awaited, emanating an authority that needed no introduction. The heavy silence was broken only by the metallic sound of the armor, increasing the pressure in the air. With a voice that brooked no reply, the patriarch ordered the defeated twins to be brought before him. The patriarch summoned the defeated twins before him. Haytona and Daytona responded promptly, submitting to their father's absolute authority. However, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. The brothers noticed an unusual tension, and confusion took over their faces. The nervousness was palpable, but they tried to disguise it. They exchanged knowing glances and forced smiles, seeking comfort in their own arrogance. Jin, however, perceived the truth. The protagonist sensed an overwhelming and unknown energy emanating from the throne, something far beyond normal. The pressure in the environment intensified. It was a silent warning that the leader's patience had run out. Ignoring the danger, the twins continued to act with disdain, pointing and laughing nervously, trying to maintain a facade of superiority. The observers shook their heads in disapproval. The disappointment with the brothers' immaturity was evident to everyone present. Patriarch Runkandel then broke the silence. With a voice that echoed power, he ordered everyone to engrave that moment in their hearts. Siren's expression became icy. There was no mercy or paternal affection in his gaze, only the severity of an impending judgment. Reality finally hit the twins. The laughter died in their throats, replaced by a paralyzing shock in the face of their father's aura. Jin observed the drastic change. The young man remained attentive, understanding that he was witnessing something much bigger than a simple family reprimand. While fear consumed his brothers, the protagonist remained unwavering, witnessing the weight of the authority that ruled the clan. That man represented the pinnacle of strength in the current era. Siren Runkandel held the legendary title of Genesis Knight, an existence comparable to a demigod. However, such power came at a high price, Upon reaching this divine level, the patriarch lost the ability to feel most human emotions. He became an entity focused on a single goal. His existence was now entirely dedicated to the obsession with the clan's development and supremacy. The patriarch's presence filled the hall, crushing any hope of mercy under the shadow of the sword god. The fear was palpable, manifesting in the cold sweat that ran down the faces of those who knew the price of disappointing the clan leader. Faced with that overwhelming spiritual pressure, the only possible reaction for some was to close their eyes and try to control the panic. But Jin was different. His eyes opened not with fear, but with a sharp and calculating clarity, remembering who he really was. The older brothers, however, could barely disguise the dread they felt, aware that any mistake there would be fatal. Suddenly, the static tension was broken. Someone's unexpected reaction caught the attention of those present, pulling them out of their trance of terror. Jin prostrated himself before the absolute authority of the clan. He knew that this was the decisive moment to change his destiny in this new life. The patriarch observed his youngest son. In his gaze, there was no paternal affection, only the cold evaluation of a warrior measuring the value of a tool. The boy raised his face, holding the gaze of the monster before him. He needed to speak, risking everything on a single diplomatic gamble. The audacity and eloquence of the young Run Candle took the observers by surprise. No one expected such composure from the one considered a failure. The family leader accepted the words with his usual impassivity, ending the moment of tension with a brief acknowledgement. Even at rest, the hand near the sword reminded everyone that he visited that castle not as a father, but as the supreme ruler. With the verdict given, the patriarch's attention seemed ready to turn to other matters, considering the issue of his sons resolved. However, Jin wasn't finished. With a fierce determination, he called for one last chance, refusing to be ignored again. The boy's audacity sparked interest in the shadows. A malicious smile appeared, anticipating the entertainment that this request would bring. One of the sisters found the boy's audacity amusing. The despair of a failure always served as her entertainment. Jin remained motionless in the center of the hall, bearing the weight of the gazes of his entire lineage. He seemed insignificant before the family giants. A murmur of confusion rippled through the ranks of the knights. No one expected the youngest son to break protocol in such a way. The interruption was sudden enough to stop those who were already preparing to leave. Tense silence returned to the environment. The closing ceremony was suspended. Everyone waited to see how the leader would deal with such insolence. The patriarch halted his departure and turned around. His colossal presence blocked the light, focusing all his attention on the child who dared to speak. Jin knelt immediately. It wasn't a gesture of cowardice, but the necessary posture for someone about to make a dangerous bet. His father's shadow completely covered him. The spiritual pressure emitted by the clan's strongest man was suffocating, capable of crushing weak wills. However, the young man kept a clear mind. He didn't show the dread that everyone expected to see in his eyes. A subtle and confident smile appeared on his face. He knew something that no one in that room could even imagine. His memory accessed a secret from another life. He recalled the ancient pact made with an entity that the family itself feared. The feeling of powerlessness from the past was still vivid. He remembered what it was like to feel life slipping through his fingers without being able to do anything. But fate had changed. The power of the shadow god, Soldaret, now resided within him, awaiting only a command. The patriarch expressed his doubt coldly, but Jin felt the atmosphere change. The darkness around him began to stir. A dark energy began to emanate from his own hand. The hidden power finally responded to his call. The energy answered Jin's call, condensing into a tangible and dark form in the palm of his hand. A slight smile appeared on his lips. The young man knew exactly the weight that this power represented for his immediate future. The reaction was instantaneous. Even the composure of the most stoic observer faltered before that impossible revelation. It wasn't just simple magic. A divine and ancestral presence hovered behind the boy, validating his existence and lineage. The patriarch observed the phenomenon, analyzing the situation with a critical eye that sought to judge the true nature of that force. Jin maintained his concentration, allowing the shadow energy to dance freely to prove his point before the clan. That aura resonated with something deep, recalling the same dark energy contained in the family's legendary sword. Barisada. The boy himself seemed momentarily surprised by the docility of that overwhelming power in his control. For the leader of the Run Candle, this transcended individual talent. It was a direct connection to the historical legacy of the house. The young man waited in silence, aware that he had just changed all the rules of the game and the perception of himself. It was the divinity that had accompanied the founder, Lord Tamar, but had remained in absolute silence since the death of the first patriarch. For some unknown reason, the shadow god decided to break centuries of isolation to contact the family through Jin. The patriarch had to admit the reality of the facts. The divine connection that everyone thought was lost had returned where it was least expected. Jin stared at his father, awaiting the verdict that would define whether he would live as a legitimate heir or continue to be an outcast. The leader turned, immersed in complex thoughts. The power structure of the Run Candle house had just suffered a seismic shock. The manifestation of the shadow god confirmed the inevitable. The ancient pact was alive again, linking the boy to an ancestral power. Jin suppressed a triumphant smile. The young man realized that he had manipulated the situation exactly as planned. The patriarch, in turn, was impressed. That was the exact answer he expected to hear from a true Run Candle. Suddenly, the leader's gloved hand moved towards the boy, who had no time to react. The protagonist tensed his body, anticipating a brutal blow or severe punishment. However, the touch was surprisingly light. The heavy hand simply rested on his head in a paternal gesture. It was a rare sign of approval. The father recognized his son's courage in coming to him and claiming his place. Jin stood paralyzed, his heart racing. Never, in any of his lives, did he expect to receive such validation from that man. The family leader observed the child in silence, assessing the latent potential he had just awakened. But the calm was short-lived. The huge man suddenly changed his posture, demanding the absolute truth about the boy's intentions. He questioned the hypocrisy of speaking about family loyalty right after leaving his brothers to fend for themselves in the storm. The young man didn't hesitate. Jin looked into his father's eyes and declared bluntly that he wanted that power only for himself. Silence returned, heavier than before. The patriarch processed the purely selfish ambition he had just heard. The boy felt the pressure of that piercing gaze, aware that his life depended entirely on the leader's next reaction. Satisfied with the demonstrated audacity, the father turned his back. He decided that, from now on, he would observe every step of that new promise. Jin felt the imposing presence behind him. The reality of his return began to weigh heavily on his shoulders. Suddenly, the air seemed to change. The young Run Candle realized that this wasn't just a distant memory. He was physically there. His breath hitched. The shock of being alive again, in his child's body, made his heart race uncontrollably. To test his theory, he focused his will. A dark and familiar flame danced in his palm, proving that his spiritual powers had crossed time with him. The contract with Soldaret, the god of shadows, remained intact. The entity silently watched its contractor, validating the second chance he had been granted. The uncertainty vanished from Jin's eyes. The fear of previous failure was replaced by a cold and absolute clarity. He clenched his fist with determination. He swore to himself that this existence would be the complete opposite of the tragedy he lived before. Storm Castle stood under the rain, no longer as a place of exile, but as the stage where his ascent would begin. His older sister appeared with a radiant smile. She carried an immense object with frightening ease, demonstrating the monstrous power of her lineage. The nanny Jilly received the load with difficulty. The servant could barely balance the weight that the warrior handed over as if it were a feather. Before leaving, the sister left a command disguised as encouragement. She demanded that the youngest get strong quickly, showing a rare affection. She turned to leave, casually commenting on her luggage. Her carefree attitude contrasted with the tension that the family hierarchy usually imposed. Jin watched her leave in silence. He knew that this display of affection was an exception, and that he would need a lot of power to survive what was to come. The tranquility was suddenly shattered. An intense and aggressive light invaded the room, tearing through the dimness of the room. Jilly covered her mouth in shock, and Jin widened his eyes. The source of that overwhelming energy caught both completely off guard. The newly acquired power began to manifest, rooting itself deeply in his being like a new, pulsating heart of magic. Jin felt the energy course through his veins. The sensation was overwhelming, but he smiled, aware that this was the first fundamental step to his rise. He then remembered the legends about the Wind Fury, a formidable figure whose true name was lost to history, but whose legacy remained alive. The challenge imposed by the God of Shadows echoed in his mind. He needed to get stronger quickly to become worthy of the contract he had just made. However, the reality of his child's body demanded maintenance. He settled at the dining table, trying to resume the routine so as not to raise suspicion. Suddenly, an idea occurred to him. He realized that he could use the knowledge from his past life to accelerate his growth. He envisioned the future he wanted to achieve, a destiny where he would master ancestral powers and never be underestimated again. His plans were interrupted by the arrival of the nanny, who served his meal with her usual dedication, oblivious to the boy's internal storm. While the soup cooled, Jin took advantage of the moment of silence to organize his thoughts before acting. His peace, however, ended quickly. His older brothers appeared behind him, bothering him with demands and incessant chatter. They gestured and showed off, trying to intimidate him as they always did, without realizing that their younger brother was no longer the same easy prey. The pair seemed extremely pleased with their own arrogance, agreeing vigorously with the absurd ideas they proposed. Jin saw a perfect opportunity in the situation. With a sly smile, he interrupted their speech and made an unexpected counter-proposal. Soon after, diplomacy gave way to manual labor. The blade of the shovel broke the hard ground, marking the beginning of Jin's plan. Dragged into a clandestine excavation, the brothers complained about the effort and the fear of being discovered, questioning Jin's sanity. The brothers questioned the logic of that arduous task, without understanding the true motives behind Jin's demand. Lonely drops marked the passage of time in the damp darkness of the underground, where secrets awaited. The silence of the place was broken, indicating that the path to the protagonist's goal was finally accessible. Jin's mind traveled to the past, recalling the sealed entity that had changed his destiny in his previous life. He recalled the imposing presence of that ancestral being, the source of the power he desperately needed to recover now. That old memory strengthened his resolve to reclaim the contract with the shadows. Outside, heavy footsteps and the sound of dragging tools announced the end of the forced labor shift. The housekeeper recoiled, startled by the deplorable appearance of the noble figures entering the room. Exhausted and covered in dirt, the brothers aggressively demanded the reward Jin had promised them in exchange for the excavation. The young Runkandel greeted the workers with a sly smile, maintaining his role as a naive child. However, the payment served at the table was much smaller than they had imagined in their greed. Fury grew in the brothers as they realized that their Herculean effort was worth only a few drops of the precious soup. That paltry amount seemed like a deliberate provocation in the face of their hunger and exhaustion. While the others dealt with the disappointment, Jin donned his cloak, ready to check the result of the work. Before the newly opened tunnel, he recognized that, against all odds, the service had been executed perfectly. Jin reached the end of the excavated tunnel. He knew the real obstacle was just ahead. The youth focused his mana, preparing to break through the physical barrier with a spell. With determination, he released the accumulated energy directly against the stone wall. The impact of the magic reverberated through the structure, forcing its way through the solid rock. The surface couldn't withstand the arcane pressure and began to fragment rapidly. A circle of power expanded, destroying the blockage that concealed his objective. The wall crumbled completely, throwing pieces of rubble everywhere. Satisfied, Jin realized that his calculation was correct. The path was finally clear. Before him, the imposing entrance to the legendary Runkandel secret library emerged. The boy looked up, amazed to have finally reached that forbidden place. However, the gate remained closed. He remembered that he needed to recite the activation password. Solemnly, Jin announced his lineage and presence to awaken the ancient mechanism. The security system recognized the authority in his voice and began to unlock the chains. The protagonist waited in silence as the massive door yielded before him. He entered the vast hall, impressed by the magnitude of the secret his family guarded. Upon entering the forbidden room, Jin noticed a motionless figure waiting in the shadows. The man's face seemed to carry the weight of decades of silence and tension. The young Run Candle, however, moved forward, drawn by an even greater presence in the center of the room. Suddenly, he noticed something that made his warning instinct fire immediately. Before him, a huge containment chamber preserved a mysterious silhouette in suspension. The protagonist was perplexed, trying to process the existence of such a device in that place. The entity inside seemed dormant, but emanated an ancient and formidable energy. Jin quickly concluded that this presence did not belong to an ordinary human being. Hypnotized by the discovery, he reached out, seeking to feel reality through the glass. The boy's mind filled with questions about why the family was hiding such a creature. He felt a tightness in his chest, realizing that he had stumbled upon a dangerous secret. The imprisoned being remained motionless, a living relic of the clan's dark past. Jin felt tiny in the face of the historical magnitude and the power contained there. It had never crossed his mind that the library served as a prison for something like that. The revelation left him stunned, completely changing his understanding of the Runkandel legacy. The mention of secret tomes sparked the young Runkandel's immediate curiosity. He sensed the tension in the air, but the desire for forbidden knowledge outweighed the fear. The protagonist couldn't ignore it. He peeked cautiously, drawn in by the mystery. What he found was overwhelming. There lay martial secrets from all the great families in the world. Fascinated, Jin reached out. Those books represented the power he lacked. He began to read voraciously, absorbing every technique and theory contained within the ancient pages. However, merely reading wouldn't suffice. The boy needed to preserve that knowledge. He prepared his belongings to record everything he could before being discovered. With determination, Jin started copying the content, smiling at his small victory against fate. He decided he would transcribe each secret at the next chance, creating his own arsenal. Those days also held sweet memories. His nanny always brought comfort and affection. However, death came too soon. Her loss marked the end of his sheltered childhood. Later, already alone, the young Runkandel reflected on the past in the quiet of the night. His thoughts were interrupted abruptly. A subtle shift in the atmosphere caught his attention. Jin stood up in full alert, questioning who would dare invade his space. Jin froze upon hearing the sound from the entrance. The young man's heart raced as he realized his intrusion into the library had not gone unnoticed. An overwhelming presence blocked the only exit. The deep voice demanded to know who dared disturb that forbidden sanctuary. The boy found himself paralyzed before that oppressive aura. He knew he was no match for the owner of that voice. The darkness seemed to come alive, watching him like an ancient predator that has just found defenseless prey. Fear locked Jin's muscles. He tried to retreat, but his body simply didn't respond to the command to flee. The intruder sensed the boy's dread. The hostility increased, amused by the little Runkandle's vulnerability. The survival instinct finally screamed louder. Jin spun on his heels and ran desperately, trying to escape the clutches of that beast. However, the escape was futile. The entity's scream echoed through the room, forcing the young man to cower and protect his ears from the deafening noise. The figure seemed offended by the attempted escape. His fury exploded, scolding the boy for trying to turn his back so cowardly. The shadow expanded, filling all the space around and making it clear that there was nowhere to run. Suddenly, the tension in the air dissipated. The entity let out a heavy sigh and crouched down, seeming tired of that dramatic chase. Jin blinked, confused by the abrupt change in behavior. The deadly threat seemed to have given way to an almost human frustration. The young man tried to formulate a respectful question, but was interrupted when the stranger invaded his personal space abruptly. The man pointed an accusing finger at Jin's face. He began to lecture aggressively, demanding immediate explanations about the boy's presence. The stranger's words caught Jin off guard. He realized that the situation, although tense, might not result in his immediate death. The entity searched frantically around, shouting questions about whether the presence it felt was really there. Jin, however, remained serene. He knew exactly what he was about to demonstrate. The intruder's eyes widened, shocked, when he noticed the sudden change in the atmosphere. A deep and ancient energy began to manifest, swirling like a portal to the abyss. The young Runkandel materialized the black flame in his hands. It was unmistakable proof of his pact with the god of shadows. The visitor shuddered, paralyzed. He questioned the reality before his eyes, fearing it was an illusion. In disbelief, he approached to examine the magic up close, needing to confirm the authenticity of that power. The confirmation was overwhelming. The entity's legs gave way, and he collapsed to the ground, crying with emotion and relief. Jin watched the scene tense and confused, disconcerted by the dramatic and unexpected reaction of that powerful being. Silence hung in the room as the stranger remained prostrate at the boy's feet, processing the shock. Regaining some composure, the creature bowed in submission, accepting the hierarchy imposed by the magic. However, shame soon struck him. He blushed violently, mumbling incoherent apologies for his previous behavior. The protagonist stared at the figure before him, finally understanding the true identity of his interlocutor. The shadows around reacted, stretching out like living claws to envelop the surroundings. Amidst the dark vortex, the legendary guardian finally revealed his name, sealing both of their fates. The ancient voice echoed in the darkness, announcing the arrival of Soldere's divine emissary. The presence defined itself, revealing itself not just as an entity, but as an ancient ally. The creature opened its jaws, releasing an energy contained for centuries. He proclaimed his lineage as the last descendant of the primordial creation of shadows. With a sudden and swift movement, the entity fixed its full attention on the small human before it. The pact was sealed with a solemn promise of loyalty and eternal companionship. Jin watched, stunned by the revelation. The immense figure of the dragon dominated the space, awaiting the final answer of its new master. To conclude the ancient ritual, the beast demanded that the contractor pronounce its true name. Jin showed no fear. On the contrary, determination and confidence shone in his eyes. He reached out to the creature and proudly declared his identity as the 13th son of the Runkendels. The story of that being dated back to past eras, when the Black Dragon Murakan ruled those lands as an absolute sovereign. However, his reign ended 1,000 years ago, when he was overcome in combat by the legendary Tamar Runkendel. The young ancestor, however, saw something beyond a simple enemy in the powerful fallen beast. Instead of delivering the final blow, an unlikely alliance was born between the human and the dragon. Tamar emerged from that encounter transformed, becoming the supreme warrior who would define the family's dark legacy. Jin cautiously opened the door, peeking inside the room to check the situation. To his surprise, the entity greeted him casually, offering snacks as if it were a common visit. The ancient being seemed much more interested in savoring human food than in discussing the pact. Jin remained silent, incredulous to see the legendary dragon sprawled on the floor, reading and eating messily. The young man shook his head, feeling exasperated by that absurd distraction involving a cake. Determined to regain focus, he slapped his hand on the book to get his interlocutor's attention. Jin then questioned whether the dragon had truly understood the complexity of what was being discussed. Murakan, however, just laughed and dismissed the boy's doubt with a carefree gesture. The boy hardened his expression and declared that, being a Runkendel, dealing with the impossible was his routine. Upon hearing that statement of identity, Murakan's playful look vanished instantly. Jin sustained the weight of the silence, demonstrating that his determination was not empty arrogance. The shadow dragon turned, sensing a familiar aura that cut across the centuries. He saw in the young man the same essence of Tamar, the first patriarch and his former companion. The sudden comparison with the legendary founder of the house caught Jin completely off guard. Satisfied with what he perceived, Murakan leaned over the boy, accepting that audacity. The revelation hit Jin with full force, instantly changing his perspective on what was possible. Murakan maintained his stern posture, letting the weight of his words settle in the boy's mind. The young Runkendel listened attentively, realizing that conventional rules about magic did not apply there. The dragon began to explain the true nature of the pact, gesturing to emphasize the magnitude of that bond. Suddenly, he grabbed Jin's head, forcing a physical connection to ensure absolute attention. The boy was caught off guard by the invasion of personal space, feeling the overwhelming presence of the entity right behind him. Murakan grinned confidently, preparing to reveal the most crucial secret about the shadow heritage. He described a power that transcended mortal comprehension, something vast and endless. Soldere's essence knew no bounds, stretching through eternity like the universe itself. The logical conclusion was imposed. If the source was infinite, Jin's potential as a contractor would also have no limits. To seal the teaching, Murakami delivered a vigorous slap on the boy's back, almost knocking him over with his raw enthusiasm. Satisfied with his own explanation, the dragon crossed his arms and ordered Jin to release the shadow energy immediately. The protagonist processed the information, feeling the weight of responsibility mixed with the excitement of opportunity. Without hesitating, Jin clenched his fists and accepted the challenge, firmly agreeing to follow the guardian's instructions. Murakami turned his face away, hiding a slight genuine interest as he awaited the demonstration of power. The young Runkandel hesitated at the sudden order, questioning whether he should even release his mana at that moment. Jin sought to understand the purpose of that command before acting blindly. Murakami, however, signaled that there was a second crucial step in that learning process. The protagonist focused his attention, realizing that the theoretical lesson was about to become practical. The dragon explained arrogantly that energy manipulation would be an advanced step, displaying his own power as an unattainable example. To his master's absolute shock, Jin replicated the feat instantly and demanded to move on to the next lesson soon. Murakami recoiled, completely incredulous at the monstrous talent that the boy had just effortlessly demonstrated. The youth maintained the stabilized energy sphere, awaiting the response with a calmness that defied common sense. The god of shadows finally understood that the boy before him was not a novice, but someone with a natural magical affinity. Confidently, Jin molded the energy freely, proving that his mastery over mana was already far beyond the basics. That demonstration of power, however, awakened something ancient in the ground. The shadows began to react to his presence. The darkness gained a life of its own, swallowing the candlelight and distorting the atmosphere of the room. The dark energy spread violently across the library walls, consuming the environment with a voracious hunger. Solderet's ancestral power manifested uncontrollably, dominating the physical structure of the castle. Jin himself was lifted off the ground by the dark mass, caught off guard by the volatility of that force he was trying to command. A surge of sudden energy tore through the air, manifesting with unexpected violence. The spiritual pressure was so intense that the very structure of the environment trembled, reacting to that ancient force. Dense darkness began to plummet from above, filling the void with a suffocating and absolute presence. Solderet's power took over everything, transforming the place into a domain of living shadows. The entity's voice echoed in Jin's mind, revealing that this power would give him total control over the shadows of the world. The young Runkandel absorbed the weight of that promise, realizing the magnitude of the destiny that lay before him. However, the manifestation was not over yet. The entity was preparing to reveal its true face. The shadow condensed into a human form, and Murakami faced the boy with a smile of pure confidence and challenge. Jin froze, stunned to witness the personification of the black dragon right before his eyes. Meanwhile, far away, the silence of a forest was broken by the trail of destruction from a battle. Luna Runkandel remained unyielding before the carcass of a dragon, ignoring the horror of the soldiers around her. Despite the bloody scene, her mind wandered away from the violence, focusing on more mundane concerns. With the colossal weapon still in her hands, she casually asked her subordinates what gift would please her youngest brother. Half a year had passed since the decisive encounter with the dragon. With the brothers who tormented him away from the castle, the day brought an unexpected surprise for the young master. Jin turned at the greeting, caught off guard in that moment of calm. His nanny was there, holding a cake with a warm smile. She wished to celebrate the boy's 9th birthday, bringing some light to his solitary life. Faced with that genuine gesture of affection, Jin felt grateful. It was a rare moment of peace and celebration within that ruthless clan. However, the joy was short-lived. A grave voice interrupted the party, announcing a presence that would instantly change the atmosphere of the room. An imposing figure entered the hall. The simple way she walked exuded a natural and dangerous authority. Jin recognized the visitor immediately. The aura she emanated was unmistakable, silencing any other sound in the environment. The shock was inevitable. Both Jin and the nanny were paralyzed, as the appearance of that person in the annex was completely out of the ordinary. Jin knew exactly who stood before him. It was the firstborn, the first among the 13 siblings of the Runkundel family. Known as the White Whale, Luna Runkundel was arguably the strongest among them all. However, she never showed interest in leading the clan. She always stayed above the fray, deliberately distancing herself from the dirty and bloody succession war that consumed her siblings. In Jin's past life, the relationship between them was non-existent. They were, in practice, more strangers than family, following divergent paths. Therefore, her return to the castle at that specific moment confused the boy. This had not happened in the previous timeline. Despite the doubt and fear, Jin maintained his composure. He addressed the powerful warrior with the respect that the hierarchy demanded. The boy's attitude made Luna stop. Something in the voice or posture of the younger brother captured her attention in an unexpected way. Jin froze for an instant. The intensity of the moment caught him off guard, as he did not expect such an immediate reaction. Luna held her brother's shoulders firmly, but without aggression. She asked if he was feeling unwell, showing a concern that contrasted with her fame. However, something in the boy's silent response made her hesitate. She realized that the situation was not what it seemed. The protagonist, remaining calm, indicated that he was perfectly fine. His calm reaction to her pressure was abnormal for a child of that age. The firstborn then projected her presence, enveloping the boy in a silent pressure. She needed to test the true nature of that behavior. She waited, looking for any flaw in the boy's facade. Luna sought to understand the origin of that unwavering confidence. Jin sustained the weight of the assessment without looking away. He knew that this moment would define how he would be treated from then on. In the background, the nanny watched the scene with trembling hands. She feared for the young master, but knew she could not interfere in the affairs of the direct lineage. Luna's expression changed. Suspicion gave way to genuine curiosity, as she found that her brother did not give in to fear. To Jin's surprise, the warrior knelt to be at his height. In a respectful tone, she asked for privacy to talk, requesting the others to leave. The young man widened his eyes. In his past life, he would never have imagined being treated with such courtesy by someone like her. Recovering quickly, Jin accepted the proposal. He dismissed the servants with a confident smile, ready to hear what his sister had to say. Now alone, the atmosphere in the room changed. Luna seemed to be searching for the right words, looking away for a moment before starting. The protagonist waited patiently in his chair. He knew that the next words would be crucial for his future in the clan. Luna finally explained the situation. The fearless behavior that Jin had shown earlier had attracted the dangerous attention of all the other siblings. Luna held her brother's hand firmly. The touch, although intense, carried an unexpected intention for someone known for her coldness in battle. Her gaze did not show the usual hostility of the Runkundels, but rather a deep and almost melancholic analysis of the boy's destiny. The firstborn advised Jin to seek his own happiness, warning him to stay away from the brutal power struggles that consumed the clan. The young man listened to those words carefully, surprised to receive such human and protective advice from someone as feared as the White Whale. The mention of the weight of the family leadership and the imminent dangers made Jin realize the real gravity of his current situation. Luna kept her focus fixed on him, ensuring that every word of warning was permanently etched in the mind of her younger brother. She lamented the ruthless nature of her other siblings, revealing her disdain for the petty rivalry that dictated the rules of the house. Then, in a rare and surprising gesture of affection, Luna covered Jin's hand with her own, offering a silent and genuine comfort. The protagonist could hardly process that kindness, something he would never expect to find coming from the strongest member of that ruthless family. But the moment of tenderness soon gave way to seriousness. Luna prepared to seal that moment with something much stronger than simple words. A magical energy suddenly manifested in the air, forming a complex seal to ensure the absolute secrecy of that conversation. Jin watched the lines of mana intertwine around him, recognizing the overwhelming power that his sister controlled with such ease. Her aura expanded violently, making the environment tremble as she challenged anyone who dared to try to harm the boy under her care. The White Whale revealed the true extent of her strength, erecting a fierce protection that served as both a shield for Jin and a warning to her enemies. Moving closer to his face, Luna made it clear that this secret alliance required total caution, ordering him to never reveal what he had just witnessed. The sudden touch from his older sister caught the boy by surprise. He wasn't used to such gentleness coming from a run candle. A heavy silence hung between them. Luna seemed to struggle with her own emotions, hesitating before speaking what she really thought. Without warning, the warrior pulled the protagonist into a hug. The sudden intimacy left the young man completely stunned. Luna confessed her deep sadness. Seeing her younger brother forced to grow up in that ruthless environment broke her heart. The warmth of the hug was foreign to Jin. He felt a tenderness that he would never associate with the white whale's terrifying reputation. She released him, but kept her hand on his shoulder. The firstborn observed him with a mixture of pity and affection, seeking to understand his feelings. Her expression softened into a genuine smile. At that moment, she decided to put aside the coldness of the clan to act as a protective sister. The sentimental moment passed, and she reached for something in her robes. Luna had prepared something specific to seal that conversation. The box revealed a necklace with a pulsating gem. The magical energy contained within the object was evident and powerful. Luna presented the item with pride. She wanted to ensure that the boy had extra protection in the challenges to come. Carefully, she placed the pendant around his neck. It was more than just jewelry. It was a physical symbol of their secret alliance. The artifact settled against the young man's chest. Jin could feel the latent power emanating from the precious stone. He examined the gift, realizing its value immediately. It wasn't a simple adornment, but a high-level magical tool. Jin's nanny arrived with the cake, completing the scene. What started as a survival test transformed into a legitimate celebration. Luna broke the family's cold protocol and offered her brother a piece of cake. It was a rare gesture of genuine affection. The nanny watched the scene from afar, feeling immense relief to see that the interaction hadn't ended in violence. The older sister said goodbye, leaving the room with the certainty that their alliance was sealed. Jin waved goodbye, feeling the weight of responsibility and the new artifact on his neck. Later, in an isolated location on the property, a figure hidden in the shadows noticed the boy's presence. The young man displayed the gift he had just received, confronting that mysterious being with the object. The entity collapsed to the ground, trembling with absolute terror upon understanding what was before its eyes. That wasn't a simple adornment, but rather the necklace of the Demon King Orgel, an artifact that carried an aura of ancient and terrifying power. However, Jin didn't wield a weapon, but a box of sweets, contrasting his warrior lineage with a gesture of unexpected kindness. The entity, accustomed only to fear and submission, looked at the young master without being able to process such benevolence. With a serene and firm gaze, Jin demonstrated that, under his leadership, the rules that govern the shadows were about to change. Inside the box, the slices of strawberry cake shone like a sacred banquet, a gift destined for those he now considered part of his circle. Upon touching the blue pendant, he felt the weight of his destiny, aware that each choice distanced him from the cruel traditions of his clan. Far away, under the relentless rain, Luna Runkindel felt the powerful change in her brother's energy, recognizing that he would tread a unique path. Overcome by an overwhelming emotion, the guy started eating the cake while tears of gratitude streamed down, sealing a loyalty that went beyond blood. The young Runkindel recalled the words that echoed in his mind, defining the course of his new life. Luna's advice was clear and direct. She instructed him to follow his own destiny, regardless of the consequences or what he might become. That year was full of crucial achievements. Jin secured his father's hopes, consolidated his alliance with his older sister, and sealed the pact with the dragon Murakan. Time advanced quickly amidst these events. Now, the protagonist was turning 10 years old. The celebration, however, gave way to discipline. Jin launched into the attack during training, testing his physical limits against his opponent. The combat master maintained his composure, watching the boy's every move with absolute attention and lethal readiness. Jin sped up, trying to use his speed to overcome the size difference and find an opening in the opponent's defense. He focused all the strength of his small body into a single direct blow, aiming to hit the target. However, the attack was stopped effortlessly. The instructor blocked the impact with his palm, completely nullifying the attack. The shock of the impact made Jin recoil. He gasped, surprised by how easily his strength was neutralized. The master's defense remained firm, demonstrating the vast distance that still existed between their abilities. Despite the exhaustion, Jin's gaze did not waver. He analyzed the opponent's technique, absorbing the lesson from that momentary defeat. The instructor decided to end the session. He relaxed his posture and indicated that the day's training was complete. The boy wiped the sweat from his face, relieved by the break, but still processing the intensity of the exercise. To Jin's surprise, the man bowed in a formal reverence. The clan's hierarchy prevailed, even after the harshness of combat. The man said goodbye with a gesture of confidence, making it clear that the young man would be under his protection until the right moment. Jin accepted the situation with serenity. He knew that this waiting period would be fundamental to his future plans. Alone, the protagonist focused all his attention on the small candle flame, seeking to feel the essence of magic. He stretched out his finger and touched the fire. It wasn't an act of recklessness, but a deliberate test of his magical resistance. The sensation confirmed his theories. Jin realized that his control over mana was progressing, making the heat harmless. The nanny entered the room carrying a suitcase, ready to assist the boy in his daily routine and the move. Jin turned to her, casually commenting that the fire under his control seemed as harmless as warm water. The woman stopped, visibly surprised and worried to catch the young man manipulating the flame with such naturalness. The boy offered a reassuring smile. He wanted to show that he was safe and that there was no reason for alarm. Regaining her composure, the nanny began to organize Jin's belongings in the closet, assuming her duties with dedication. While tidying up the room, some objects left on the bed caught her attention, interrupting her movements. They were advanced study books, silent proof that Jin dedicated his free time to learning far beyond what was expected. She smiled with pride and tenderness, recognizing the solitary effort and precocious maturity of her young master. With maternal affection, the nanny continued to fold the shirts, smoothing the fabric with the care of someone who cares for someone precious. Suddenly, Jin reacted with a start, responding somewhat awkwardly, as if he had been caught off guard. The nanny stopped, confused, while holding the young master's clothes. She did not understand his sudden change in behavior. Jin announced that he would take a quick walk, leaving Jilly behind. The woman tried to question the inopportune moment, but he was already hurrying away. Ignoring the protests, the boy entered the isolated chamber. He called out to his secret companion, seeking immediate answers. Murakami was waiting inside the room. Jin went straight to the point, needing to validate the information that disturbed his mind. The young run candle kept his gaze fixed and serious. He demanded the complete truth, without the dragon's usual games or riddles. The entity turned with a wide smile, pointing at the boy. Murakami's attitude was relaxed, contrasting with the tension of the moment. He patted his chest confidently. The dragon was about to reveal secrets that the clan had kept buried for centuries. With a theatrical gesture, Murakami reaffirmed his authority on the matter. He seemed to enjoy being the bearer of those ancient truths. Jin nodded, absorbing every word. He accepted his partner's premise without hesitation. The being of shadows puffed out his chest, reminding the boy of his position. As guardian, his memory was the only faithful record of the past. The protagonist then confronted the official story. He questioned the legend that his family had always been composed only of pure swordsmen. A sudden understanding illuminated Jin's mind. The pieces of the historical puzzle were finally beginning to fit together. The true lineage was revealed. The Runkandels were born as magic swordsmen, and their founder, Tamar, was the most powerful of all in history. The boy lowered his gaze, processing the weight of that heritage. Everything he knew about the supremacy of the sword was incomplete. However, Murakami explained the tragedy behind the fact. The loss of magic was not natural, but a consequence of a humiliating vow made 1,000 years ago. Murakami turned to the ceiling, beginning to discourse on the grand future he believed awaited them. With exaggerated theatricality, the dragon proclaimed that the world would revere the return of the noblest being of all thanks to that alliance. Jin, however, remained impassive before the Guardian's arrogance, silently questioning if so much presumption was necessary. Despite the differences in attitude, both reached a consensus, and the agreement was sealed with a knowing smile. Murakami made an affirmative gesture, ensuring that there would be no problems with his part in the deal. The Guardian, however, couldn't resist provoking the boy, grabbing his head with a rude and dominant familiarity. Jin removed the dragon's hand immediately, making it clear that he demanded respect and would not be treated like just any child. The tone of the conversation changed when Murakan admitted that maintaining that physical manifestation was rapidly consuming all of his remaining energy. Knowing he had little time before disappearing, the dragon revealed his true immediate interest with a greedy smile. The young Runkandel listened attentively, noticing the sudden change in the ancient being's priorities. Jin was already prepared for that kind of demand, and began searching for something he had brought among his belongings. He presented his strategic offerings: a stolen wine and a fresh pie made with the first fruits of the season. Murakan's haughty posture crumbled instantly, and his eyes gleamed with covetousness at the sight of the drink. The dragon exclaimed euphorically that just that banquet was worth all the effort and the price of having awakened. Enthusiastic about the quality of the food, he immediately demanded to be introduced to the person responsible for preparing that marvel. Jilly warned the boy that, although he had trained hard there, life on the main estate would be infinitely more difficult and demanding. The nanny knew that future challenges would test all of his limits. Her warning carried a mix of maternal affection and the harsh reality of the clan. With a formal bow, she said goodbye. That was the moment when the child stopped being just a boy to assume his role as young master. The guardian knights, Jerome and Holtz, promptly introduced themselves. The elite escort was prepared to ensure the safety of the trip. Jin accepted the greeting with serenity. He understood that his phase of peaceful isolation had ended at that moment. The protagonist walked towards the transport that awaited him, leaving behind the safety of the annex without looking back. Everything was ready for the departure to the Runkandel headquarters. The entourage organized itself in the courtyard, awaiting only the order to follow. The horses neighed, agitated by the icy air, signaling their impatience to begin the journey along the road. Settled in the carriage, Jin prepared himself mentally. His destination was the heart of the family's power, a place where weakness was not tolerated. Jilly approached the vehicle's window. She noticed that the weather was changing, with snowflakes beginning to fall gently. The young man observed the landscape outside. The snowfall seemed like it would accumulate quickly, promising to make the journey difficult. As they could not use the teleportation portal, the group was aware that the land journey would be long and exposed to the elements. Suddenly, a violent impact shook the carriage. The tranquility of the conversation was shattered by an abrupt external force. Jilly instinctively hugged Jin to protect him, while the guards outside shouted orders for them to remain hidden. The unmistakable sound of blades clashing echoed through the snowy forest. An ambush had begun. Jilly held the young master firmly in her arms, her protective instincts on high alert. She knew that the situation demanded absolute seriousness. Jin, however, observed the chaos around him and realized something was wrong. This didn't seem like a simple common bandit attack. The nanny acted on instinct, moving abruptly to ensure the boy's safety. The warning cry echoed amidst the confusion. She whispered urgent instructions, reminding him of the duty of the Runkandels. The priority was survival, no matter the circumstances. But the conversation was cut short. The woman noticed a sudden change in the atmosphere, a threat that was approaching too quickly. The protagonist analyzed the knights who were supposed to protect him. The conclusion was chilling. One of them was not loyal, but a traitor in disguise. The realization ignited a cold fury in Jin's gaze. The enemy was not only outside, but infiltrated into the elite escort itself. Jilly gritted her teeth, preparing for the worst. She was willing to endure any physical pain to fulfill her duty. In an act of desperate loyalty, she unleashed a hidden power, asking for advance forgiveness from the master for revealing her true and lethal nature. The impact was overwhelming. The nanny endured the direct blast, using her own body as the only barrier between death and the boy. The stillness of the winter forest contrasted with the violence of the combat. The icy setting seemed indifferent to their fate. Jin remained alert while being carried, watching their rear. He knew that escape was only a temporary solution. Jilly feared punishment for breaking house rules, but the young Runkandel ordered her to forget formalities and focus only on running. Obeying, she darted through the snow, holding him tightly while trying to put as much distance as possible between them and the traitors. Suddenly, she stopped. Something unexpected in the path caught her attention, forcing her to abruptly halt their escape. Jin quickly analyzed the situation. If the assassin truly wanted him dead, that would be the perfect moment to strike, right after he exited the vulnerable carriage. However, the enemy seemed to be only watching. The young man realized there was something strange about the attacker's passivity at that critical moment. Suddenly, voices broke the silence of the forest. A knight shouted orders to the squad, commanding them to find Jin Runkandel immediately. Jilly held the boy tightly, both tense. They realized that the search party was dangerously close, but the intentions of those men were still dubious. The figures that emerged between the trees did not bring the relief of a rescue. There was a threatening and heavy aura emanating from those armed warriors. It wasn't long before they were discovered. A mage pointed in their direction, alerting the rest of the group to the location of Jilly and the boy. The siege closed quickly. The leader of the group shouted to his subordinates, making it clear that the top priority was to capture the Runkandel, ignoring everything else. With his sword in hand, the man advanced with determination. He declared he was there to fulfill a mission in the name of the Runkandel family itself. Other knights joined the charge, surrounding the pair from all sides. The pressure increased, and the supposed rescue mission looked more and more like an ambush. Jin, however, saw through the charade. Observing their behavior and equipment, the protagonist concluded that they were not just traitors, but imposters. Jilly placed herself in front of her charge, ready for combat. She noticed that if those men were truly elite knights, their posture would be different. The nanny's determination made the attackers hesitate. For a brief moment, the confidence of the false knights wavered before that single unarmed woman. Jilly gave them no time to recover their courage. With a fierce cry, she unleashed her murderous intent, preparing to defend the young master at any cost. Her reaction, however, only amused one of the opponents. The man smiled sinisterly, as if the woman's resistance was exactly what he wanted. The cruel smile soon gave way to action. With a roar, the enemy advanced, starting the inevitable confrontation in the snow. Jilly whispered a lethal instruction to the boy. She knew that, to survive that ambush, Jin would need to get his hands dirty and eliminate one of the targets. The protagonist immediately understood the gravity of the order. There was no hesitation in his gaze. He accepted the command, ready to do whatever was necessary. The enemy attack came from above, brutal and direct. The false knight brought his blade down with full force, confident that he would crush the resistance in a single blow. However, Jilly had already read the trajectory of the attack. Her combat instincts, sharpened by years of experience, allowed her to anticipate the movement before it even happened. The aggressor realized too late that he had made a fatal mistake. The confidence on his face turned to shock as he encountered an impenetrable defense. The counterattack was instantaneous. Jilly intercepted the charge with a speed that defied logic, striking the opponent before he could retreat. The nanny spun her body fluidly, transforming the impact into a deadly dance. Her blade cut through the air and the enemy's defense with terrifying precision. Furious and humiliated, the man tried to react, cursing against the woman who surpassed him. He prepared his sword for a desperate second strike, but he was too slow. A transverse cut tore through his chest, silencing any attempt at retaliation and sealing his fate in an explosion of blood. The force of the impact threw the imposter backward. Jilly completed the movement with elegance, proving that the difference in skill between them was abysmal. Even after the fatal blow, she did not relax. Her eyes remained focused and alert, scanning the environment for the next threat to the young master. The man plummeted, screaming in pain as the reality of his defeat hit him. He had no chance against Jin's guardian. Jilly stood firm over the body of the defeated enemy. Her posture radiated a lethal authority, serving as an insurmountable barrier between danger and her charge. With controlled breathing, she cast a cold gaze at the rest of the group. The mask of the gentle nanny had disappeared, leaving only the ruthless warrior. To make the warning clear, she dragged the leader's body towards the other soldiers. The brutal gesture served to intimidate anyone who dared to take another step. The soldiers stared at the ground, paralyzed by shock, as the reality of his leader's death began to sink in. Jilly maintained her lethal position, emanating a silent threat that promised the same fate to anyone who dared to move. Jin watched the unfolding events with an analytical calm, awaiting the reaction of the remaining enemy. Fear finally broke through the survivor's mind, transforming his caution into pure dread. The young man felt a dark connection to his family's legacy, recognizing that this desire for power also belonged to him. He verbalized his ambition without hesitation, declaring that his time to rule had begun. The mercenary broke out in a cold sweat, feeling suffocated by the overwhelming presence emanating from the boy. In an act of madness, the man prostrated himself in the snow, shouting praises not to his victor, but to a distant force. He revealed his true allegiance by calling out the name of the enemy family, exposing who really ordered the attack. The mention of that name made Jin sharpen his senses. It was a threat he knew intimately. It was the Zippel, the dynasty of mages who shared dominion of the world with his own family. Unlike the Runcandle and their quest for the sword, those rivals dedicated their existences to supreme magic. It was a colossal force that operated in the shadows, manipulating global events through their arcane councils. The fanatic continued to rave on the ground, his face twisted in an insane devotion to his distant masters. Jin just let out a dry, disdainful laugh at that pathetic display of blind faith. The last mercenary, completely subdued by the dark entity, begged for his life to be ended at once. Jin watched the request for death with indifference. The young man just awaited the necessary outcome of that battle. The enemy's body collapsed lifelessly in the snow, finally silencing the threat that had been pursuing them. Jilly remained vigilant, aware that the commotion would attract unwanted attention to the secret they guarded. An authoritative voice rose behind them, questioning whether a certain ancient presence was involved in the massacre. The nanny acted with diplomatic speed, bowing to show respect and try to divert the focus of the investigation. Jin, however, did not shrink back. He faced the newcomer and showed that he knew exactly who he was and what squad he led. The boy accused the knights of having deliberately looked away at the start of the attack, testing his ability to survive. The captain shuddered, caught off guard by the sharp perspicacity and coldness in a child's words. Jilly intervened gently, touching Jin's shoulder to reinforce the image of vulnerability and end the verbal confrontation. The veteran warrior analyzed the situation, struggling to reconcile the boy's tactical intelligence with his harmless appearance. Realizing the distrust, Jin withdrew his intimidating aura and put on the mask of a naive child again. The captain, deciding to ignore his suspicions for now, turned and ordered his men to take control of the area. The subordinates hesitated, confused by their leader's abrupt change in attitude, but did not dare to question it. With the danger averted and the secret preserved, Jilly guided her young master away, relieved by the success of the disguise. The knights laughed, finding the situation trivial. They completely underestimated the gravity of what was to come. Luna, however, dismissed the concerns. The firstborn guided the group down the icy slope with absolute confidence. Death was a constant in that world. The fate of the weak often ended in a forgotten pool of blood. The white whale watched her younger brother. There was a silent expectation in her gaze, waiting for him to notice the truth. She urged him to speak. The warrior wanted to know if the boy's senses were as sharp as she suspected. Jin noticed the discrepancy. He noted that not even experienced warriors could grasp what was happening there. Luna confirmed his suspicions. She explained that the perception of that reality escaped even elite fighters. The lesson was given. The woman turned her back, satisfied that he had understood the depth of her power. The young protagonist absorbed her words. He understood the abyss that existed between common strength and true supremacy. His mind turned to Jilly. The fate of a nanny in the Runcandle family was irrevocably tied to the child in her care. However, caring for the family's failure attracted the contempt of the other siblings. They saw her only as a target for their cruelty. Jilly endured constant humiliations. She was ridiculed and mistreated by the other servants, paying the price for her loyalty. The woman cried silently many times. The powerlessness in the face of the family's brutal hierarchy almost destroyed her in the past. Back in the present, Jin broke protocol. He bowed before her in the snow, offering a respect she had never received. The boy kept his head down. That gesture carried a silent promise that the days of suffering were over. Jilly tried to comfort the boy, vehemently insisting that he shouldn't carry the blame for that situation. The young man, however, cut off her apologies. He stated that, as long as she was his nanny, she would also be the only knight he trusted. The boy's firm and loyal declaration caught the woman off guard, leaving her visibly touched. Jin turned his face away, ending the sentimental moment so they could focus on the mission ahead. The group continued their journey through the snow, with the protagonist determined to honor his words and protect his allies. The trek persisted until they finally spotted the wooden sign marking their arrival at their destination. Jilly took a deep breath, internally struggling to contain her nervousness and maintain the necessary professional demeanor. She solemnly promised her master that she would do everything in her power to be useful. Upon entering the inn, the guard accompanying them stepped forward to negotiate the rooms with the receptionist. The boy remained silent, but his mind worked quickly, analyzing the situation with distrust. He recalled an infamous figure from history, Bouberet Gaston, known as the Transformation Sorcerer. It was a known fact that not even the most powerful creatures, like dragons, were capable of performing a perfect transformation. That man, however, had used such a forbidden ability to commit countless crimes and deceive entire kingdoms. The image of the criminal and his devious deeds lingered as a warning in the protagonist's memory. The young Run Candle pushed away these dark thoughts, turning his attention back to the reality of the moment. Jin recalled details of his previous life, while his nanny resolved the final formalities of the trip. Jilly thanked the captain for the safe escort. The young master, maintaining etiquette, said goodbye politely. However, Jin's mind was far away. He remembered that man's arrest by the Special Affairs Division years ago. The boy concluded that there was no logic in helping someone who, in the past, had directly threatened his life. The weight of these memories, added to the fatigue of the trip, suddenly overwhelmed him. Exhaustion won over his resistance. The sudden silence caught Jilly's attention, and she turned to check on her charge. She found the young master already collapsed on the bed, overcome by sleep before even settling in. Jin slept deeply, his tranquil expression contrasting with the cold calculations he had been making moments before. Watching him, Jilly smiled tenderly, relieved to see him resting like the child he appeared to be. The peace, however, was short-lived. A presence stealthily emerged, announcing itself with an insistent sound. The repetitive noise bothered the boy, who grumbled, still half asleep, complaining about the disturbance. Upon waking up confused, Jin realized he had dozed off. His eyes soon found the culprit for the forced awakening at the window. The visitor continued to make noise frantically, acting as if it were scolding the boy for sleeping too much. Jin relented to that insistence. He assured the entity, projected in his mind, that he had understood the message. Still, the shock was inevitable. The protagonist questioned if that was really the stealthy disguise that the great dragon had planned. The small creature let out a shrill scream, clearly indignant at the way it was being treated. Jin held the animal casually, explaining that his previous reaction was just surprise at the unexpected transformation, not fear. The cat landed on the floor and growled. Shadows began to emanate from its body as it decided to abandon that disguise. A human figure emerged from the smoke, shouting in frustration and demanding that the boy pay attention. Suddenly, the sound of wood cracking interrupted the discussion. Heavy and swift footsteps approached the door. Before the man could react, an overwhelming force struck him from behind. Jin watched, stunned, as his companion was thrown. Jilly burst into the room, her face contorted with panic and fury, shouting to know if the young master was all right. The intruder collapsed on the floor, holding his head in agony, while Jin remained still, realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control. The nanny activated her combat aura and prepared her weapons, accusing the stranger of daring to attempt to take the boy's life. She leaped upon the fallen target with lethal intent. The dragon, now vulnerable, faced death up close with pure terror. However, upon looking at her attacker, the man's fear vanished. A sudden strange emotion flushed his face. He instantly regained his composure, flashing a charming smile even while completely subdued. Jilly froze, her fury replaced by confusion at his absurd question about sweets. In the background, Jin covered his face in shame. Ignoring the danger, the man remained lying down and spoke softly, acting as if this encounter were fate. With the misunderstanding finally cleared, the entity stood up and introduced its true identity to the house. Jin needed to quickly intervene to explain the situation. The young man tried to calm his nanny in the face of this unusual presence. Murakan, now in human form, swallowed his pride. The dragon dramatically begged the woman for forgiveness, much to the boy's amusement. He tried to act natural, mentioning the strawberry cake. Jilly, however, remained withdrawn and suspicious of this strange figure. The revelation hit her hard. The nanny was shocked to realize that this creature had been secretly watching them every day. Jin decided to be honest to appease tempers. The young master apologized to Jilly for keeping the secret for so long. Meanwhile, Murakami took the opportunity to tease. The guardian seemed to be having fun, testing the little Runcandle's patience. But Jilly's reaction was surprising. Instead of continued fear, she regained her composure and showed a sudden determination. The hierarchy needed to be clear at that moment. Jin set the conditions, and his nanny promptly obeyed the orders. Murakami then made his solemn promise. He assured the woman that he would protect the boy at all costs, regardless of the dangers. However, a practical question remained. Jilly questioned the loud noise heard earlier, scolding the pair's recklessness inside the room. Confirmation of the damage came immediately. A piece of the window frame came loose and fell to the floor. The room had not withstood the pressure of the transformation. Deep cracks appeared in the ceiling, revealing the structural damage. The dragon just chuckled at the chaos he caused. Jilly, observing that flippant attitude, seriously questioned whether she could trust this new ally. Later, the scene changed completely. The group arrived at the teleport gates of Mittel City to continue their journey. They needed total discretion. Disguised in cloaks, Jin and his companions passed through the local squad's inspection. The security officer approached the group, indicating that they also needed to go through the verification. Jin remained silent, watching the interaction cautiously, while the cat on his shoulder watched the surroundings. The guard, however, surprised Jilly by stating that he had a specific question for her. The nanny maintained her composure and, in a polite tone, allowed him to proceed with the questioning. The man explained the situation, gesturing to emphasize that this was not a trivial conversation. He insisted that the matter was relevant enough to deserve her attention at that moment. With a knowing gesture, the guard tried to ease the tension, showing that he had no hostile intentions. Meanwhile, the rest of the security team maintained strict surveillance at the checkpoint. In the middle teleport lobby, formality required Jilly to present her identification to proceed. Upon seeing the document, the employee's attitude changed drastically, immediately offering first-class accommodations. The group accepted the offer and headed to the reserved area, aware that the wait would guarantee an instant trip. Already in the safety of the private room, Jilly called Jin's attention, still processing what had happened. She seemed restless, reflecting on how easily they passed or perhaps on the magic involved. Jin, who was taking advantage of the moment to read, noticed the doubt in his caretaker's voice. The young man smiled calmly, ready to explain the logic behind the situation that was bothering her. The tranquility of the VIP room was suddenly interrupted. Jin and Jilly turned around when they realized they were no longer alone. The young Runcandle narrowed his eyes. He sensed a presence that demanded immediate caution. Those traits were unmistakable. Jin instantly recognized the lineage of the one approaching. A member of the Zippel clan entered the room, escorted by guards. The protagonist recognized his family's sworn enemies. Without any ceremony, the intruder threw himself onto the opposite sofa. The audacity of invading someone else's space created a silent tension. Jin kept his composure, feigning interest in the book, but every fiber of his being was alert to the danger. The Zippel boy began to complain loudly about his travel schedule, completely ignoring etiquette or the presence of others. Jilly gritted her teeth, struggling to contain her outrage at such blatant disrespect. Murakami, however, did not have the same patience. The dragon in disguise decided to act and jumped from the nanny's lap. The intruder noticed the animal's approach, and his arrogance vanished, replaced by genuine interest. Lowering his guard, the young Zippel smiled and reached out his hand, believing he would receive affection from the feline. The response was violent. Murakami attacked without warning, sinking his claws into the historical enemy's hand. The guards reacted, but the noble immediately stopped them. He took the blame for the incident, avoiding a larger conflict. Despite the appeasing words, the Zippel's gaze revealed that he was analyzing the situation more carefully. While Jilly calmed the cat, Murakami seemed proud of his deed. The tension lessened, but the danger was still present. The newcomer introduced himself as Veridin Zippel. Jin remained seated, stroking the cat in his lap, while processing the presence of a member of the rival clan there. The young mage promptly apologized for his earlier rudeness. He seemed determined to correct the initial bad impression with a display of noble etiquette. The protagonist watched him in silence. Jin knew exactly the weight that surname carried and analyzed the intentions behind that polite facade. Veridin was publicly acclaimed as a prodigy. The world saw him as the ideal model for all young mages, possessing both exceptional skill and impeccable character. There, before Jin, the Zippel heir maintained that perfect posture. He projected an aura of harmless benevolence, just as the rumors described. The young Runkandel decided to enter the social game. Jin offered a polite smile, although he continued to keep Murakan under control in his lap. However, the cordiality was short-lived. Jin casually questioned Veridin's risk assessment, pointing out that if the guards had drawn their swords, the situation would have been irreversible. The mage laughed, trying to maintain levity. He did not expect a 9-year-old child to discuss the lethal consequences of an armed escort. The atmosphere changed suddenly. Jin abandoned his childish innocence and made it clear that he knew exactly the blood price that would have been paid in that confrontation. Veridin's smile faltered. He realized, with a cold shock, that the boy in front of him spoke not as a child, but as an experienced strategist. Jin described the brutal scenario of severed fingers and diplomatic conflict. He provoked the rival, asking if a war between the clans would be worth it for a simple prank. The patriarchs' names were invoked. The young Runkandel brought up the leaders of both families to emphasize the political gravity of that encounter. Then, Jin reversed the logic with cunning. He questioned whether the great clans would really care to intervene in a trivial fight between children. The insight of the question caught the mage off guard. Veridin was stunned, finally understanding that he had completely underestimated the intelligence of his interlocutor. The tension dissipated into laughter. The Zippel heir crossed his arms, admitting with good humor that he had just learned a valuable lesson. The older sister demanded immediate payment, refusing any postponement. The boy was caught off guard by the sudden and direct demand. She then imposed her travel conditions. She demanded absolute silence until the portal activated, making it clear that her rest should not be disturbed. The authority in her voice left both the young man and the nanny paralyzed. No one would dare contest a direct order from the White Whale. Jilly, however, soon overcame the shock. The nanny watched the warrior with shining eyes, demonstrating a deep and reverent admiration for her idol. The protagonist just sighed at that scene. He tried to ignore the enthusiasm around him and focused on his reading, resigned to the situation. The teleportation mechanism began to operate, issuing warnings about possible physical side effects. The magic intensified, signaling the imminent departure. Just before they disappeared, a voice cut through the magical hum. The young Runkandel's name was called with urgency and intensity. It was a final farewell before separation. Luna expressed her satisfaction with the meeting, promising that their paths would cross again in the future. With a radiant and energetic smile, the powerful warrior disappeared into the light of teleportation, leaving a lasting final impression. The scenery changed instantly. Jin and his nanny emerged into a freezing environment, shivering with the sudden drop in temperature upon reaching their destination. A man of distinguished appearance awaited them. He formally introduced himself as Pedro, a butler in service of that property, ready to receive them. Before them stretched a solemn and grandiose landscape. Countless blades were stuck in the ground, creating a silent monument. Each sword there represented an ancient story and a legacy. The place emanated the heavy aura of generations of warriors who served the family. That was the famous Garden of Swords. As he contemplated the place, the protagonist bitterly recalled his past life, where weakness defined him. Only those who honored the clan could leave their weapons there. Jin observed the ultimate symbol of Runkandel glory, determined to rewrite his destiny this time. Jin returned to the place that would define his future. The imposing main residence of the Runkandels awaited his arrival, a monument to the power he needed to conquer. As he walked, the boy bitterly recalled his previous existence. In that past life, he had been neither a leader nor a genius, just a failed shadow of what his lineage demanded. However, that era of weakness had ended. The young man focused his mind, determined not to repeat the same mistakes that had led him to ruin before. He swore to himself that fate would be different this time. In that ruthless and cold place, Jin decided he would forge a life that was truly worth living. A formidable reception awaited him at the top of the stairs. His siblings watched from above, with gazes full of judgment and arrogance, ready to intimidate the returning youngest. Among them was the matriarch, observing the scene with an unsettling calm. She seemed to analyze every step of her son, assessing whether he would survive the snake pit that was that house. Jin did not back down under the pressure. Maintaining a firm posture and with his feline companion on his shoulder, he responded to his mother's call with the required respect, but without subservience. Even the creature on his shoulder seemed to sense the tension in the air. The cat remained alert, its eyes attentive to the dangerous family dynamic unfolding there. The clan elders narrowed their eyes, looking for any sign of hesitation. Every movement of the boy was under scrutiny, testing whether he would break under the watch of the strongest. But Jin knew exactly how to play. He masked his maturity with an innocent and childish smile, stroking the cat to disarm the hostility of those present with pure naivety. The tactic worked, generating immediate confusion. The matriarch and her guards exchanged perplexed glances, unable to understand why the boy was acting so lightly in such a solemn moment. The atmosphere changed in an instant. A murderous pressure emanated from the shadows, a silent test to see if the boy possessed the mental fortitude necessary to withstand the true nature of the Runkindles. Ignoring the tension, the matriarch bent down, suddenly interested in the animal. Curiosity overcame formality, and she demanded to know who the little creature was that dared to enter that sacred ground. With absolute audacity, Jin presented the cat as if it were royalty. He declared without hesitation that the animal possessed the family's surname, elevating a simple pet to the status of a Runkindle. The declaration left his siblings completely stunned. The shock paralyzed the group, who could not believe the youngest's audacity in making such a joke in front of the clan's elite. The patriarch of the Runkindle family observed his youngest son with overwhelming intensity. His presence dominated the entire courtyard, demanding absolute respect. Siren questioned the peculiar choice for the name of that pet. He demanded a justification for the boy's decisions, testing his conviction. Jin maintained the facade of childish innocence. The protagonist looked up at his father, hiding his true maturity and the memories of his past life. The black cat remained there, oblivious to the deadly tension that permeated the conversation, serving as the focal point of that silent test. The clan leader found the situation amusing, but his expression soon hardened. The momentary fun gave way to a cruel and necessary lesson for a Runkindle. He instructed his son on the nature of honor. The warning was clear about the ruthless stance one must take if someone disrespects what belongs to them. The definition was brutal and absolute. Anyone who offered insult should not be tolerated, but treated immediately as a mortal enemy to be eliminated. The murderous pressure emanating from the patriarch made the brothers and servants around him tremble with dread. The air became heavy, suffocating the weakest. However, Jin did not back down for an instant. A confident smile appeared on his face as he perfectly understood and accepted the family's ruthless philosophy. The young man embraced his feline companion tightly. He absorbed that visceral teaching, determined to apply it without hesitation in the future. Siren noticed the total lack of fear in the boy. A wide, predatory smile formed on his face, satisfied with the audacity demonstrated by the youngest. With the lesson delivered, the strongest man in the clan turned his back and left, leaving a trail of admiration and fear among his remaining children. Time advanced relentlessly over the mansion. 4 years had passed since that fateful encounter, bringing the beginning of a new summer and a new phase. Jin now exhibited the physical signs of maturation. He wiped the sweat from his face, exhausted after another session of extreme physical training. The combat instructor stared at his pupil in the center of the courtyard. The practice was over, and it was time to assess the progress achieved with so much effort. The sparring partner smiled with satisfaction at the end of practice. He seemed strangely invigorated, demonstrating an energy that contrasted with the effort expended. The wooden swords were returned to the rack on the wall. The dry sound of the equipment being stored marked the official end of the day's combat. Jin let out a long sigh, feeling the weight of fatigue in his lungs. The other boy, however, just casually commented that the performance had been acceptable. Hunger guided them to the cafeteria line. The aroma of roast meat and hot soup promised to replenish the energy spent during the exhausting session. The protagonist found a quiet place on the stairs to rest his legs. Something in his mind, however, kept him alert, even in that moment of pause. The blonde boy approached with the trays, maintaining a smile that bordered on mockery. He handed over the meal, addressing Jin with an exaggerated and theatrical servitude. Schmitz, a commoner 3 years older, sat down next to him. Without any ceremony, he began to devour the food voraciously, while Jin maintained his composure. The run-candle heir narrowed his eyes, analyzing his companion. There was something in that carefree and informal attitude that deserved closer observation. While chewing with his mouth full, the commoner asked about the quality of the meal. The total lack of etiquette was evident, but he didn't seem to care. Schmitz stuttered slightly as he commented on the amount of food. He seemed to be trying to justify his own gluttony, or perhaps fill the awkward silence. Silence returned between them on the stone steps. While the commoner scratched his head, perhaps embarrassed, Jin focused only on fueling up for the next training session. Suddenly, Schmitz used his spoon to gesture, changing the tone of the conversation. He began to critique Jin's technique, specifically questioning his shoulder posture. The young Runkandel listened attentively, holding his cutlery firmly. The unsolicited advice was about retreating at the right moment and maintaining confidence during strikes. Jin let out another sigh, resigned to his companion's audacity. Listening to lectures and tactics from a commoner was part of that exhausting routine. As he observed the remains of the meal, Schmitz's voice echoed again. This time, the older boy admitted, albeit reluctantly, that Jin was evolving. As his companion devoured the meal with childlike enthusiasm, Jin watched him. That carefree attitude contrasted with the rigorous environment they lived in. The boy spoke about his lineage, the Hairan. They were renowned swordsmen who loyally served the Empire, historically accepting the role of guard dogs. He narrated the tragic end of a swordmaster with his mouth full. The news of the suicide, he said, brought a sadness that seemed out of place with his voracious appetite. There was no pause for solemn mourning. The boy continued to eat, treating the death of an ancestor as just another casual topic of conversation. His expression lit up soon after, without any weight on his conscience. His resilience, or perhaps simple indifference, was disconcerting. Jin processed those words in silence as he finished his own food. There was much to learn about how other clans dealt with their own tragedies and legacies. The initial tension dissipated. Sharing that simple meal on the steps created a rare and genuine moment of connection between the two young warriors. Later, walking alone through the corridors, Jin reviewed his current attributes. The balance between mana, shadow energy, and swordsmanship was still not where he wanted it to be. He stopped suddenly, surprised by his own assessment. The mental calculations revealed that his growth was occurring, but certain discrepancies required immediate attention. There was no time to theorize. In the courtyard, the imposing figure of Luna already awaited him, decreeing that the exhausting routine of the previous day would be repeated. Both assumed their combat stances. The physical distance between them was short, but the abyss of skill that Jin needed to overcome was still immense. His older sister smiled, noticing the boy's tension. She knew that this training would require more than just brute strength or rote technique. Her instruction was mystical and direct. Jin needed to stop relying only on his physical senses and awaken an internal perception, focusing on the essence of combat. The protagonist absorbed the profound command. His fists clenched with new firmness, preparing to try to see the invisible.